Hi guys, this is Aki from Gaming Stream and welcome to my Gaming Issues episode 4. So basically, we're a channel on YouTube that plays classic games throughout the early part of the week and then more modern stuff throughout the latter half of the week. The focus of the channel is to play Japanese games, single player games and story based games. And then once a week we'll be doing a podcast just like this one, which you can see on the channel as well. Just to give you an idea of some of the stuff that we have on the channel already, it's basically things like The Last Guardian, Resident Evils, as included a new one and a bit of Yakuza 0 and things like that. The podcast is going to be looking at the gaming news of the week and is basically looking at it from three different perspectives: the gamer's perspective, the marketing perspective or messaging even, and the business perspective. Right, let's get started then on some of the stuff I've been up to and also some of the news of the week as well. So first of all, I have been playing some Yakuza 0. A couple of 3 videos are up on the channel right now, so you can check them out if you like. I haven't finished it, so this is more like my thoughts rather than a review per se. But basically, I would say that straight away it's really fun in terms of gameplay. It's fast, fluid, and there's really weird and kind of bizarre stuff that kind of goes on. Like you just randomly run down the street, and then somebody's video game will get nicked, and then you'll have to try and get the video game back for someone and things like that. Or I'll run down the street. Another side mission that just randomly happened to me was, can you basically fill in for the producer for our show because he's gone AWOL, and then I'm having to be a producer of a show without knowing anything about it. There's really cool things like that. Also, it's basically a brawler, so you're kind of just punching and kicking when you're actually doing the fights and stuff like that. And within the gameplay, you can place things like Space Harrier and Outrun in the Sega arcade machines, and also UFO capture things, so you can try and get little stuff plushy thingies. If you like, it's really really good. And as well, what's actually surprising because I've never played a Yakuza game before. This is the first time I played it. But what's surprising is actually how deep the story is. Again, if you watch these couple of videos, so much has happened already, and I've only really played 2 chapters of it. Sorry about that. And the story that I've been kind of playing, just to kind of summarize without giving away too many spoilers in case you kind of want to go and play it, is basically it is just about treachery. It's about a rivalry, and it's about rivalry over a plot of land, and a kind of and how they're trying to basically own this plot of land. A couple of rival factions within the Yakuza tribe or Yakuza mafia, and they're trying to own it by kind of screwing each other over, so to speak, and framing people for murder and things like that. And it seems like it's going to be having a lot of twists throughout the story, which is quite good. I quite like that. The only thing I'd say so far in the negative aspect is that the graphics aren't that great, but it's because it was originally going to be a PS3 game that got ported over to PS4 in Japan and that got shipped across here, or it was made in dual development for both. So yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it's not a major thing. It is a little bit not great, but I hardly even notice sometimes as I'm playing it. To be honest with you, it's just because the rest of the game is so great. Another thing as well is even though it's in a Japanese voice acting, which to be fair usually can be better, or most of the time is better than the English counterparts. Voice acting is very very good. I have no idea what they're saying, quite frankly, other than the fact that I'm reading the subtitles underneath. But once I'm starting to listen to them speaking, especially in the main cutscenes that are to do with the story, I'm immediately drawn in. I think it's amazing for that. Right, let's move on to some of the news then this week. So one of the first things that I read from one of my favourite websites is called Kotaku. And on Kotaku I read that Koei Tecmo, which is actually one of the publishers as well, and they make games like Dynasty Warriors and Hyrule Warriors, I suppose, which was the Dynasty Warriors spin-off, but with Legend Zelda characters. They basically made a VR cabinet. What's interesting about the VR cabinet though is that it appeals to all 5 senses. So you've got stuff about touch and smell as well as what you see and so on. But what's quite interesting as well is so far they've got some games that you can play on it, and it's Dynasty Warriors, GI Jockey, and what's the third one? Horror Sense. So GI Jockey Sense and Horror Sense. As well, they're using the PS Move and the PSVR to do this, which is quite cool. The type of things that you can use in this cabinet, or rather some of the stuff that's in the cabinet, is your chair might move left, right, up and down, so kind of like you're being shifted along this way and that way. There's also a wind function, so maybe to simulate obviously wind, but also if like an explosion happens or something like that. There's a temperature function as well, so you can get hotter or colder depending on what's going on in the battlefield and what's near you. As well, it takes account into, it releases smells, so you might be able to smell a little bit of smoke if for example, there's fire around and things like that. From what I can see though, it doesn't look like it's probably going to be a commercial product. It's probably just going to be a product that they take with them from like shop to shop or convention to convention, something along them lines. So really, what it is for them, it's a marketing tool. It's kind of like get people into into this cabinet. Let's strap them in. Let's get them all hooked up and everything. They're gonna have a time of their lives. They're gonna come away and they're gonna talk to people and maybe even buy our games like Dynasty Warriors or tell people about the games. And I think that's really the point of it, is to get a bit of free PR almost, or use it as a PR tool, but also as a marketing tool for the company. It's quite interesting actually within itself that they've come up with this technology, because you kind of wouldn't expect it from, or at least from my perspective, a publisher to actually make and develop, this whole cabinet. But then again, I suppose they're using a lot of off-the-shelf parts with the PS Move and the PSVR. But credit to them, it sounds like it's quite cool. And yeah, maybe it'll be a big thing. Maybe we'll see a commercial version in the future, but I probably doubt it, to be honest with you. Another thing that I saw on Kotaku this week was, and you're probably going to hate me for talking about this, but the games that were released for 1-2-Switch. So 1-2-Switch is a mini game compilation on the Nintendo Switch. It's one of the launch games from Nintendo, and basically it's got some really bizarre ones. It's got all sorts of stuff in there, and like dueling and things like that. But some of the really bizarre ones is like trying to shave carefully and getting all the facial hair off and things like that. Answering the phone. You get to walk on a runway because apparently life isn't your runway. Also, kind of like playing hot potato, but with a fizzy drink bottle instead, and kind of shaking it and passing it on to the next person, and things like that. Also, you have to try and put a baby to sleep by, I think it was said, something like putting the tablet as calmly down as possible, so the child doesn't wake up as well at the end. And you obviously milk a cow. You might have seen videos about milking cows already. I think what's really clear about 1-2-Switch is that they're definitely trying to appeal to the same audience that they did with Wii Sports, i.e. the casual market. It's basically going to be a game that will, if it turns out to be good, is going to be talked about a lot by the casuals and kind of make it into an impulse purchase. They might actually get the consoles into their houses that way, and then potentially they can move on to Mario and things like that afterwards. But it's very, very clear that that's the type of market that they're going into, this fun, crazy, over-the-topness, that'll have a bit of a laugh and people will absolutely get absorbed by it, and then they'll go out and buy the machine themselves and so on and so on. So it's quite interesting. Maybe it'll work for them, maybe it won't. I suppose it really depends on what quality the games are inside it. So bits I've seen so far, it does look quite good. Probably not for me, if I'm honest with you, but if it helps them get the sales in, if it helps them get the people to actually come and enjoy the game, then why the heck not? Okay, so from a different side this time, I read from GameSpot that Final Fantasy 15, it has actually broken even on the first day of release. So what break even actually means is basically that they've recouped all the development costs straight away. Oh, sorry, break even means they've recouped all the costs for developing a game or whatever business product is out there. But in this particular case, what they've done is they've done that on day one. So straight away they have made all the money back. So anything else that they've made from after November 29th, yes, I still remember the date because I was fucking waiting for that game for 10 years, but let's just not go into that too much. Yeah, so anything from there, they basically just recoup the cost straight away, and it's great for them because any other game sale that's been made for them since November 29th has all been profit for them continuously, which is great. And it also means that they'll be able to support the game further, and that's, you hear about things like that when they're talking about adding new story scenes in it, and when they're talking about changing chapter 13, I want to say, where you basically where you just in effect walking in a straight line or more or less for like a couple of hours, and making gameplay improvements to things like this. So that's great. So it's kind of turning this game into a platform a little bit, but they're also willing to turn it into a platform because they have already made the money back to an extent, and now obviously they just want to turn that into bigger profits. Because when they release these patches, it's going to get people talking about it, and when people talk about it, some people might not have played it already, so then they're going to go out and buy it, or people might have traded it in, and then they're going to go out and buy it again, and that in turn might even lead into, like, let's say even if 10% of people bought a season pass, that's another £20 for them. It's great. I'm really happy that this has actually been the case, because I've been a massive Final Fantasy fan since I was a child, and then for them to be actually breaking even straight away, and then probably making a significant amount of profit in the 4 or 5 months since is just great news to me, and it really makes me happy. And I suppose as well what's interesting is because this is the first time that they've changed the series so drastically in a while, to be honest with you. I mean, they've always had changes between each game, significant changes as well. Some games have bigger changes than others, some not so much as it is, but they've always changed the game's battle systems time and time again, and the stories, and it's, in effect, each game is a reboot in the series. That's probably the easiest way to describe it. But at least this is the first time where they've changed it so significantly compared to some of the others. That they now know what works, what doesn't work, and they can re-examine themselves and kind of make future, base that to make future progressions in the series to come. So that's really good news. And hopefully we'll get back to Final Fantasy of the best of the heyday. I mean, it's still a great series. They still have great games, but it's nowhere near as good as it used to be. Although I have quite liked Final Fantasy 15, and it's definitely how it feels, how it used to feel back in the day. They carry on with that. I'll be happy forever. I haven't played this game myself, but I'm hearing as well. Neo is reviewing really well. So Neo is basically like Dark Souls, but as a samurai, you're a Western person. As I think you're from England originally, and then you move over to Japan to do investigations, or rather discover the new world, so to speak. And then along the way, you become a samurai, and you have to fight loads of demons and stuff like that in this game. So the actual person becoming a samurai is a real person, but obviously the demons not so much, but apparently it's reviewing really well. It's supposed to be really good, really deep, kind of like Dark Souls as well. But it sounds like it's a little bit more action oriented, so maybe it'll be something for that people will absolutely love. I don't know. I want to play it myself, but I've got quite a few games on the backlog right now, so it's gonna have to wait for me. But yeah, sounds great. GameSpot also said to me, or rather Phil Spencer through on Twitter or through GameSpot or something like that, has said that there'll be more exclusives this year than there have been in the past year. So part of me thinks that's just marketing speak. That could just be him talking shit, quite frankly. He could be telling the truth though as well. I mean, I do like Phil Spencer, and he generally does come across quite well. But as always with these type of statements, take it with a pinch of salt. But it just could be as well to make sure that people are still talking about Xbox. After all, it's been a while. The only thing that anyone ever really talks about these days about Xbox is the odd thing that you hear about Scorpio. So he's kind of still trying to make sure that people remember who Xbox are, especially when Scorpio does come out, and maybe people will actually jump straight onto that console. So that'll be quite interesting. I've also been playing For Honor. So I played the beta of For Honor. Play the closed one a little bit, and then the open one a little bit as well. I haven't played massive amounts, but I have played a little bit, enough to kind of know about it and to talk about it. So the first thing that I noticed, especially in the open beta, is how choppy that game actually is. Constantly it drops out, and it does tend to recover quite quickly as well. To be fair, like it might drop out for 5 seconds in the match, and then it'll come back. But it shouldn't probably be doing that, especially so close to release, because I think it's out in about a week or so. So that's a little bit worrying. I played it on PC first for the close, and then on PS4 for the open, and it definitely looks a lot better on PC. But I suppose the community is probably going to be on the PS4 anyway, so it kind of depends what you're into. It's quite hard in a way, because you basically have 3 stances, and the other person has the same 3 stances, and you're trying to block and then hit and block again and break their defenses by and grab them and things like that. So it's quite interesting. The only thing I might say is, and this is too soon to tell, and I think when the game comes out and the reviewers get their hands on it and things like that, it'd be more interesting. But at the moment, it seems like I could play this for half an hour. Great. Play it for an hour or two, I'm probably going to get a little bit bored, to be honest with you. So maybe that's just me. Maybe it's just because it's too soon. Maybe it's just too soon to tell. It's going to be an interesting one, but that's kind of how I feel about it right now. I'm cautiously optimistic. I want this game to be great. I've been keeping an eye out for a little while, but I'm not 100% sure if it will be. But hopefully it is, and we'll see how it goes. Right, another thing that I read on GameStop is Nintendo are claiming, again, kind of like the Phil Spencer statement. I'd probably argue that, take this with a pinch of salt, but they're claiming that they may get better third-party support than ever before because of the nature of the development in Nintendo Switch. So basically they're saying that they found that in the space of a year, you can port a game from the PC to the Nintendo Switch. Great, that's absolutely great. It's going to make it easier, assuming this is all true, and assuming that it will increase the uptake of third parties. It means that it's going to be easier, it's going to be cheaper, and it's going to require less people to actually port the games over, just because of the ease within it. And then that's going to make it easy for developers to do so, and then in turn, because it's easier for them, they're actually going to be willing to port these games over or actually develop new games for it. So it could be potentially great. However, I will just add that they have said that only 80 games are in development at the moment. So we're not going to see the benefit of this until probably next year, really, because if it's going to take a year for these games to be ported across, when the Switch launch happens and all the publishers go, oh, actually this is assuming this does happen. Oh, this console is actually selling really, really well. We need to now get our manpower on this. We won't see that until a year's time from when the PC games start getting ported over. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. So it's probably going to be a quiet first year, but then again, most console launches are. But also, what's alarming about the 80 games is that's kind of low. Usually, it's about 300 games that are in development, from what I understand, for a launch of a console. So obviously, they won't all come out at launch, but that's the general gist of it. So 80 is significantly lower. And if you think about it as well, that's only 30 more than PSVR has or had when they talked about in PSX, I think. So that's not really that much for a brand new console. So I suppose we'll find out, what's the gist of it and what's going on and how good or not this third party support is actually going to be. But I suppose it's going to be watch this space kind of thing. Also, I read on GameSpot as well that the modular design of the Switch, i.e. taking off the Joy-Cons and reattaching them and whatnot, means that they can look at adding new controller options in the future and maybe even other options in general to kind of improve the console and things like that. So that's great news. Means that you might have this idea, or you've potentially got this idea of, here's one Switch that's, depending on what they can add or cannot add to it, I suppose, let's keep adding these extra, I don't know, power parts or whatever, extra batteries, things like that, and that console might last like 5 years as opposed to 2, for example. Or maybe they'll give you some sort of upgrade policy where you can just give back, I don't know, everything but the controllers, and you get to keep the Joy-Cons, and then they give you something else, or a new tablet or something like that. So that's quite interesting, the idea that they're even looking into something like that. It could mean that the Switch keeps getting extended over time, which is great. Also, another thing, again, I read on GameSpot, is that they're looking, and I think they've said this before as well, that Nintendo sees the mobile as a pillar to, or one of the 3 pillars of their business. So another one is the handheld market, i.e. 3DS, and then the final one is the home console, i.e. the Switch. So what they're saying is they do see this as a mobile pillar or a pillar of their business, and so far it's been a great success. So a bit of facts and figures. 78 million downloads have happened of Super Mario Run, which is a significantly high amount, and it's just crazy that many people have downloaded it. Sounds quite high, however, 5% of people are actually bought, or just over 5% of the people have bought the extra levels rather than just living with the base number. But apparently that's actually deemed as quite a high number. Usually 5%, most games don't even reach that. So for 5% to happen, like even successful games, so for 5% to happen, it's actually quite high. And what they're saying is that as they look at the numbers rolling in day on day, it kind of looks like it's that 5% number is increasing, and they're thinking that soon it'll probably hit the 10% mark. And that's kind of what they're aiming for as well. So it's quite a high number, so that means that they're making great amounts of money from the Mario game, and well, it's going to be coming out on Android soon as well, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. So, something I read on IGN, and something that was quite surprising for me, and a little bit gutting because I probably won't get to go. But E3 is opening up its doors to the public for the first time in, I think it's like 25 years or something like that. And they're going to have 15,000 tickets available, and depending on whether you're an early bird person or not, it's going to cost between 120 to £200 for a ticket. Still, it's quite impressive. I think the reason that they're doing this though is, or rather, one of the things that's going to be quite interesting is how many people are going to be going there, i.e. the average person, and then they're going to start reporting on it and things like that. So potentially we could have the next wave of influencers or media potentially, who go into a show like E3 and it inspires them to start talking about it and then maybe join the games press or games media or try to become YouTubers, etc. So could be quite interesting how much that ends up inspiring people. Um, the other thing, and one of the interesting things as well, is because of this, then a couple of publishers have recently been kind of stepping away from E3, i.e. EA and Activision. Last year they weren't really there, or they were doing like separate events at the same time, but like outside and around, and trying to appeal to the main people anyway. So, or rather the general public. So I think what might happen is this will actually get them to come back into the main conference halls and stop them from kind of edging slightly away from E3. So I think it's both a benefit to the public, but also benefit to the ESA, I think they're called, who are the people who make the E3 conferences and stuff like that every year. So it's quite interesting. But yeah, it's definitely, I think, the main reason is to try and get people talking about it, creating a buzz and getting these games out into the public hands sooner, and the publishers are just going to eat that up the first chance that they get. Okay, so another thing I read on IGN, sorry, I thought I heard something then. There is a Castlevania 4-part 30-minute animation series. So each episode is 30 minutes long, so it'll be about 2 hours overall. And Netflix are doing the series. From what I understand, it's going to be completely aimed at adults, and it's also going to be very Game of Thrones inspired. It's going to be quite interesting because this is kind of like the first time something like this has happened, especially for Netflix. And Netflix are known for doing quite high quality shows, like things like Jessica Jones and all the Marvel stuff and so many others. They're known for doing that. So what's going to be quite interesting is if they do this Castlevania show quite well, does this mean that we're going to have more games going this way and more gaming IPs coming across into Netflix or other forms of TV? Could be something potentially special that's going on here. But also, could this be the end of the cycle where we're getting games items but just not doing very well in any other media? I.e., they don't do very well in films, they don't do very well anywhere else. If you look at it, Resident Evil is the only big successful film franchise that's actually come out from gaming. And let's be honest, I mean, I love them because they're so bad, but those bad films are pretty bad. Let's be honest. So it could be potentially the first time we might actually end up getting something which ends this bad spell, which would be absolutely fantastic, and I really hope it does happen. It's just going to be great news for gaming related media, and for once I won't have to go, oh my god, there's something gaming coming out. Oh great, something gaming came out. It would be one to keep an eye out on, and hopefully it becomes a big success for them, and then in turn inspires new ones to come up with on new shows. But also, I would guess, chances are they've got another gaming related property in the pipeworks, because if the Castlevania becomes seriously big, and even if it's just from a critical perception, they're going to want to get a new games related item out there, and they will try and pump that around as quick as possible if they know what they're doing, or rather if they're clever about it, rather, because I would suspect that they've probably got at least one sort of follow up type, in the broadest sense, a game being turned into some other TV show for them. So that's going to be quite interesting actually. What the hell's going to go on with that? One last thing I read off GameSpot, because apparently I get most of my news from GameSpot, is that Mass Effect Andromeda is dropping the Paragon and Renegade system. So if you remember this, the first game, basically you choose a good option and you get good brownie points, and you choose a bad option and you get bad brownie points. And then that can in turn open up more dialogue options further on down the line. Again, the more good you are, the more good options you have, and so on. So they're saying that they're kind of scrapping that and replacing it with something else because it was a little bit too binary. You were either good or you were either bad. But let's be honest, in conversations that me, you, and anyone else ever has, is you're not really good or bad. You're probably in somewhere in a bit of a spectrum, and they're kind of trying to explore that option a little bit more. So what they're saying is a statement will be said and it'll be your turn to reply, and you kind of have to say almost how much you agree or disagree with that statement, kind of like when you're doing a survey maybe. So I strongly agree or strongly disagree and so on. Or strongly agree, so, somewhere in the middle, and then disagree or strongly disagree. So that's kind of the thing that they're trying to go for. So what they're trying to say is basically you're going to be playing almost as yourself, or you're more likely to play it as yourself, and you're going to almost play out your own thought patterns, and in turn, that's going to help bring further immersion, because you're playing out your thoughts better than just I'm good because I'm good or I'm bad because I'm bad. It's more like, well, you know what, there's a bit of grey lines here. Let me explore those grey lines further. Right, cool. So that's the end of this episode. This is Archive from Gimme Stream. That's GIMME space stream. We're a channel on YouTube that plays classic games throughout the early part of the week and then more modern stuff throughout the latter half of the week. And it's basically Japanese games and story-based games, single-player games. Things on my page are things like Resident Evil, Last Guardian, Abzu, Mass Effect a little bit, Virginia, Resident Evil 7. I'm in the middle of playing Yakuza 0, so please do check us out and subscribe and share. Also, once a week I'll be doing a podcast just like this one, and it's basically looking at the gaming news of the week through 3 different perspectives: messaging, business, and gamers' perspective. So if you like any of our stuff, please do check us out and please do subscribe and share. Thank you very much for tuning in, and that was Welcome to My Gaming Issues, episode 4. Right, take care.